All right, I'm live. I'm going to do a Paths of Glory live stream 1957 Kubrick movie that I think is one of his. I think it's his first masterpiece. You can argue The Killing is earlier, his noir from a couple years before, but I just love this movie. I watched it recently, and I decided to bring my classroom into here and do some analysis on the movie for those of you who kind of want to think about it in a little bit more than a basic way and have some key ideas about the movie so you can watch it and listen to it keenly, thinking about all the things it could be about. At least from my perspective, there could be more. So we're going to do an analysis with some images, which you can see on my, was it for you, the left side of the screen. So I'm just doing images, no sound, no motion, so I don't get blocked or demonetized. Okay, but the images will do us just fine because Kubrick is a master painter, as many of you know. So, by the way, welcome, Letterboxd, Substack, YouTube memberships. Thank you all for that support. It's all great. I am a professor. I teach film, and I just use this in my film class, although I only had a day on it. So I'm going to go through this very, well, carefully, but not carefully. We'll fly through this at a brisk enough pace to have fun, and we're going to go through it chronologically. That is the way the movie presents the story chronologically, which is set in France, 1916. Already you have, this is a 1957 movie, a movie about World War I, but alert, a lot of times when films, artwork, period, novels, anything written or filmed, does something at a distance, it could be talking about that event. So this movie certainly could be about World War I. Maybe it is. So you could take it that way. Maybe it's about France and not anything else, right? The French military, which is what it focuses on, and a lot of the travesties there. So feel free to just take it almost at face value in that way. But you can always do this where you can say, this is 1957. This is after World War II, 12 years, and yeah, and then the Korean War for the United States, because this is a United States movie made by Hollywood, so it's 2-3 years after the Korean War. Maybe this is about recent wars. Maybe it's about the Korean War. Maybe this is about the U.S. Maybe this is about war in general at the time in the 20th century. Maybe it's a universal movie about all war. So you've got all these levels you can choose from. Specifically, its particular setting and the people, or a little bit more indirect or abstract from that in terms of the time period, the historical context, 1950s, or it could be a universal movie. So you feel free to decide that. I don't have skin in the game here to decide that for you. I do think I'm a historical context person, historicist in a way. I think this is more about its time period and less about World War I, which had already been, for a number of intellectuals and artists, kind of trashed as a needless, pointless war in a lot of ways, at least certainly the European front. So let's start here. This is a movie of very strong contrast, and we'll just see this all over the place in these images. This is the opening shot. Voiceover narrator tells us that both sides don't advance much more than a couple hundred yards, and it's a big deal if they make a couple hundred yards. So you get this wide establishment shot where these troops go up to the chateau. The chateau is going to be one of the 2 or 3 settings in this movie. That's it. It's kind of a small budget movie. There's not a lot of locations, not a lot of people, and frankly, I could easily see this being put on TV as some kind of TV docudrama or some kind of one of those teleplays that they did in the 1950s on American TV. But Kubrick's filming, his lighting plus his lenses, camera choices, camera technology is as advanced as you can get. If you tricked me and told me this movie was made in the 1970s, maybe the 80s, I could believe you based on the look of it. And by the way, you need to get, I'm not shilling for them, they don't pay me, unfortunately, but the Criterion release, the Criterion Blu-ray, I think that's what I have, which is very, very crisp and looks excellent. Don't settle for less for this movie. It deserves giant projection and that kind of restored or well done version of it. So yeah, the high has good comments already. The high angle establishment shot. We're going to come back to this. And this movie will come back to the chateau 4 or 5 times. And it's a big deal because this is the place where the generals, the high-end generals in the French military here, have holed up. Maybe they've commandeered it, and they are now going to converse, dine, and dance in this place, which is going to be the site. And by the way, if you haven't seen this movie, I'm going to give spoilers. So, if you like spoilers, great. Hang on with me. If you don't, please go watch the movie, and then you can enjoy this video, which is going to be very insightful. This is going to be the site. Spoilers coming. All right? This is the site of the execution of the 3 men who are going to be picked by the French military to die because they were cowards. So the cowards are shot right outside this luxury estate where the generals are so distant from the war, and the most top generals certainly are, and other people, and they're hanging out here living the life of luxury. Kubrick loves this. We're going to deal with this throughout all of his filmography. Think about the end of 2001: The Space Odyssey. Think about Barry Lyndon, the high-end types of people, the high class, the elites, who are removed, but and then this Western civilization stuff, art, particularly architecture too. This is where the generals are, and here the opening scene has these 2 generals. I got to get my character list here. I forget their names. I think it's General Moreau on the left, given a Scarface, kind of a villain in this movie, and then General Brulard, who I think is higher ranking than Moreau here, and they're going to have this interesting Kubrick-like conversation. When I say that, it's a conversation that's not direct. Not exactly. And you have to watch this carefully in order to understand what they're up to. The guy on the right is asking the guy on the left to do this military, what do I call it? I'm missing the word. He's going to lead a charge on the anthill, this place that the French army wants to take over. I think it's because of publicity. I think it's to show the glory of France. It's some kind of initiative. And the general on the left wants a promotion and is thinking about it. So the conversation is more or less about him getting promotion if he does this thing that's going to slaughter a lot of his own men. And all these guys are about themselves. These are highly paranoid conversations, Machiavellian. Not to slander Machiavelli, I think he was a clever philosopher, but these conversations are about power politics, individual self-interest, and ambition, how to get ahead in this giant bureaucracy, and use other people, lots and lots of minions like the French soldiers here, and kill them in order to get your way. This is Kubrick 101. The bureaucracies dominate the 20th century. Whether you're in the United States or Russia or somewhere else, communism, sort of capitalism, democracy, doesn't matter. Giant bureaucracies, self-centered and ambitious people, kind of sneaking their way, backdoor conversations with other elites. And that's actually the scope of Barry Lyndon. You know, the other, I think, great war movie by Kubrick, sorry, Full Metal Jacket. But that one, too, was Barry Lyndon figuring out how life works, according to Kubrick, or according to that movie, really, and scheming his way to the top. So you get this, and then the man of principle, the conscience in this movie is the Kirk Douglas character, who we'll see in just a minute, who becomes the center of this kind of composition. What I want to make a big deal of as well as their surroundings. Again, they're in the chateau with the height of European civilization. It's going to be food and dance later on. Here it's paintings, draperies, the architecture, everything. It's luxury. And that's going to contrast with the battlefield, the trenches, and even the place where Colonel Dax is living, which is a bunker under the trenches, and it's awful and hideous. It's a mole's existence. So this is the end of the conversation they're having. And these 2 guys are scheming to get lots and lots of people killed with no principles. And then the movie is going to debate these principles versus pragmatics later in the movie, with a conversation between the conscience of the movie, Colonel Dax, Kirk Douglas, and General Brulard. By the way, I like to ask students, I wish I would have a picture of all these guys, who is the most cold-hearted person in the movie? And there are lots of possibilities, at least 4 or 5. Most cold-hearted. And I actually, even though the guy on the left has a scar, kind of the nastiest person, because he's gonna attack his own men. He's going to order his own this is terrible. His own men to be bombarded. He to me, is not the most cold-hearted person. It's the man on the right who seems more jovial. But the most the connected person in terms of media and politics is General Bullard, whose real true nature comes out as the movie goes along. And then Colonel Dax kind of works his way up the ladder to deal with him, who's at the top of the chain of command as far as this movie goes. This movie is going to be about then the travesties, I should summarize it, the travesties of the French army at this point, which orders these men to their own slaughter and then tries 3 men for cowardice, which we see in the movie. We get the point of view of these men all over the place. It's ridiculous, a travesty of justice and absurdity. So this one thing about this movie is called anti-war movie. If you think it's anti-war, I think if it's anti-war, which I think it is, if you think it's a universal interpretation, notice that the movie does not depict the enemy at all. No Germans. Except for one, the German woman at the end, who has nothing to do with the fighting, is basically a captive. No depiction of an enemy. I bet that Christopher Nolan picked up on this idea for Dunkirk, right, where he doesn't depict the Nazis in World War II. And this is arguable. The deaths in this movie, the major deaths, the ones that are a big deal, are only from one's own side, friendly fire. Now, there's battle scenes where you see bombs and things, and you assume that's the Germans shooting at the French and killing some French. A lot of French. But I think this movie has more friendly fire deaths than anything else. And it's a very rare war movie where the enemy is not killing you. It's your own people, your own soldiers. And that, to me, if you want to make it a universal anti-war movie, it was what makes an anti-war movie. You get killed by your own people, including these 2 schemers here in this picture at the very beginning of the movie, in this estate of luxury, high-class, elite estate, where they have no deaths at all. Or they're not going to get killed. They're not under threat. General Scarface on the left will go to the trenches during the battle, but he's probably not under threat. So these guys are high elites. They're very distant, cold, and abstract. Again, this is like Dr. Strangelove, which I should have mentioned too. Kubrick has 3 great war movies. This one, Strangelove, and Barry Lyndon. Sorry, Full Metal Jacket. Strangelove, again, depicts the elites, but then that military base where there's a lot of action, but the elites in their bunkers, like the president, are far away from the action. He loves to do that. And is he anti-elite? Maybe. You could argue that for sure. So this is the European architecture, European awesomeness from the Western civilization right here, contrasted with the trenches. So the trenches famously in World War I. And there's Colonel Dax. I think one of his first depictions, and you will see him confronted by, I'm going to call him General Scarface. I know he's not, but that scar is so prominent on the right side of his face, our left, and he's going to he's going to crush him. He's going to push him over to the edges of the frame. He's going to make him charge the anthill. A great term for this movie, because what is an anthill? Nothing and worth nothing, right? And they nicknamed this German position the anthill. Metaphorically, though, it is what it is. Like, it means nothing, or it could get them nothing, or it could win nothing, except possible media acclaim, bureaucratic acclaim for the 2 generals who are scheming, one of which is General Scarface here. And Kirk Douglas, Colonel Dax, has to deal with that. A lot of people, you and I probably, I know I'm not, but you probably are neither an elite in a bureaucracy. You're probably in the middle of things. A middle manager. Here I'm a professor in a giant nonprofit. We are middle people, and we have to deal with the superiors and the inferiors, and some of the ambitious drives, some of the self-centered projects, some of the nefarious ongoings with everybody. And if we have a conscience or principles like Kubrick is asking us to do, we're like this character. So it's pretty easy for a lot of people, I think, to side with him. And Kubrick focuses on that. Later on, I think, Barry Lyndon takes this character, and we don't even have this character. I think, if I remember correctly, in Barry Lyndon, sort of, not quite with Strangelove, but more or less. Um, Next, so here are the inferiors. So the prelude to the action, the main battle scene, are these three men. Ralph Maker's character on the right. The middle guy is a corporal, and I got to study my character list, but the middle character here is a coward in the first use of friendly fire. He's going to be a coward and kill the guy on the far left here. When the guy on the far left advances on this patrol at night to see where the Germans are, these three guys are out. The guy on the left goes forward. The guy in the middle throws a grenade. Now, and then his report does not admit this, and the Ralph Meeker character on the right is troubled, like Colonel Dax will be later. These are all the two guys on the either side are privates. I can't remember the rank of the man in the middle, but he is higher ranked. And so again, you have this bureaucracy problem where the inferior sees the nefarious, horrible, here cowardly doings of the superior. What do? Kubrick's great question in this movie. You're an inferior and you see superiors be awful, evil, immoral, selfish, ambitious, got lots of their own people killed, travesties of justice. What do? That's the end of the movie to me, and it's a very troubling, complex end of this movie. So this is the first setup for what comes later. Here, Colonel Dax is in the middle trying to get the report from these two guys, and you'll see a lot of separations between the people who are divided. Very common, basic film grammar thing to do with the man on the right, knowing that the man on the far left has done the friendly fire. Will he admit that? Will they admit this to Colonel Dax? Will Colonel Dax know this? And then, during the battle sequence, we get lots of POV shots, both tracking backwards, seeing Colonel Dax move through the trenches, very stark, very great trench sequences, or first-person POV. So now, here's something you need to notice if you ever watch this movie again. You are a participant in the action. Sometimes. Sometimes you're either, here, maybe this is the point of view of Dax, or you are a soldier, a private yourself. So the camera sometimes is wandering around as an observer, a ghost-like observer, as most cameras are in most movies, or it's actually participating. One of my students said this is like a Call of Duty shot. Well, later on with the guns, you'll see that. And I think that participatory thing is going to come back later. Oh, yes, it is. In a very key moment, there is a key shot in this whole movie we will see from a first-person point of view. Battle sequence happens. Men go to the left, almost all of their demise. Not all of the regiment goes. Some of them stay behind. And the General Scarface, orders their bombardment. So, again, friendly fire. He's ordering his own troops to attack his own troops, which he gets called out for. He's not allowed to do because of procedure, but he really wants to do it. It's awful, evil, terrible, and later he will not admit that he did this. He will deny it, right? Another act of cowardice on the part of a superior, but the inferiors can do nothing about. That's the battle sequence. Then, of course, the French fail. General Brulard on the right, disappointed, upset. Scarface mad. Colonel Dax brought in. I like this because you got this giant painting in the background with it. I think it's a pleasant pastoral scene, which is the opposite of the war scene. And what's going to happen in this movie is Dax is at the center of this horrible tragedy where all of his men, many of his men got slaughtered. And then the superiors want to kill some of his own men in a trial which tries them for cowardice, even though that they all participated in the battle and none were really, let's say, responsible for not charging, if I remember correctly. This is almost the opposite of, I just watched A Few Good Men with this is a couple months ago, Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson movie. I'm going to have a video coming out on that, where that's about the duties of a soldier to say no to an inferior. And spoiler, the end of that is they do get in some trouble for that. The ordinary private or lower ranking soldiers get in some trouble for not saying no to a superior. But the giant 20th century question is, 21st century too, are you responsible for just obeying orders, just doing your duty? And here I feel like the men obey the orders, do their duty, and get whacked for it, or they have the chance of getting killed for it by their own generals. So that's one. This is one reason why I hesitate to say this is a universal war movie. It may be more about a particular kind of situation because sometimes underlings are responsible for doing duties that are highly immoral here. But these guys are ordered to charge, and they do, and they fail, and then they're held responsible for obeying orders, which is a travesty of justice in this movie. So that I think that's supposed to be wrong that they did their duty and they're going to be called out for it, which in this high-ranking meeting, in this very place, the first setting of the movie, this, what would you call it, luxury bedroom, apartment, whatever this is, dining room maybe, it is where these generals, again, are having this conversation about who should be killed and why, and they negotiate basically, like all high-level Kubrick things, indirect negotiation here, I think it's a direct one, to have 3 men executed. So they're going to pay the punishment for the crimes of the French army for not taking the hill. A wonderful shot here where the generals sort of conspire, but deep in the background is Colonel Dex with, I can't remember who that is, and they're just little minions in the background compared to these generals who are kind of breathing on top of them from a two-dimensional perspective. And, this is the classic contrast in the movie. The setting of the beautiful chateau, massive staircase, absolutely awesome architecture for a high aristocrat in France versus the peon-like jail existence of here the Ralph Meeker character has been chosen as one of the men to die. Colonel Dax visiting him in the bunker or in the jail. And here are the 3 men. Let's make a big deal of this. Why were these 3 men chosen to pay the price for France, as it were, which is actually the generals wanting to I can't really tell why the generals want to kill them. They claim it's for morale. I don't believe that. I think it's to put the blame on the private soldiers versus themselves, and to have a media. We never get the sense of a media or a newspaper sort of conglomerate or some kind of people influencing by media here, but they talk about that. So that's why I'm saying it. These 3 guys are use the show trial pets, and then why are they chosen? Kubrick's not gonna say, well, it's because of one reason. It's because you're an idiot, or because you're a loser, or because you're a coward, or because of chance. No. The 3 men here, a variety of things. You can get outed by a bureaucracy. You can get mauled over by a bureaucracy, run over, killed, because of any reason. And so he picks these 3 guys, and they have 3 different reasons they're chosen. The guy on the far right, Ralph Meeker, is his superior, as we know, who threw that grenade, has chosen him, probably, we can guess, it's never really stated out loud, because the Ralph Meeker character has the dirty info on him. He knows he's killed his own men. So he's eliminating him on purpose, perhaps. Chosen him, eliminated on purpose. So there's vengeance. Far right. Well, what do I do? Vengeance over here. The guy in the middle is chosen by lots. So that's chance. And then the man in the middle is chosen because more or less he's a loser, kind of a dumb guy, according to other people. So the 3 reasons are 3 different reasons. And you can get chosen even if you did great in battle, were brave before, or whether you were ordered to stay behind. Amazing. So the bureaucracy can run you over. That's my point here. That's, I think, the movie's point. I keep saying Kubrick's point. We'll just say that's the movie's point. Whether it's by chance, even though you're brave, whether some superior has it out for you, whether you're kind of dumb, all kinds of reasons you could be sacrificed by your own bureaucracy who should be taking care of you here. It's your own nation. And then here is the courtroom scene. A spectacularly filmed scene. This is where you need to go through the movie and see it as it's filmed, because to me this is where there's several other places obviously, but to me this is where this is so vastly different from other war movies at this time. Certainly from the TV teleplays, and this script is kind of like a teleplay. You could almost put it on TV at this time, where they had these 1-2, if I remember right, 2-hour dramas on TV. That's what I mean by teleplay. Basically a play on TV. It's theater TV. The way this is filmed is so spectacular. It just blows everything out of the way because of the lenses, the framing, the lighting, compositions, and the way that the movement over the course of it to show who's bad and who's good and what's nefarious and travesties of justice. Here are the three men lined up to be on trial, and it's going to be a show trial with the prosecutor there having a say on all that's going to be allowed. Basically, is that the prosecutor gets to say, did you move forward or not? And the men say, no, I didn't move forward, or oh, I returned. And then they're tried for cowardice, with the Kirk Douglas character being their defense attorney down there. But look how low, pathetic, weak, covered up by the shadows of the jury, military tribunal there. Amazing. This, by the way, still images, to me, they don't work that well because this is always in motion. The prosecutor's moving around. You'll never see this as a static image, but you can get screenshots like this, and they look amazing. But watch it in motion. It's even better, in my opinion. Colonel Dax is minimized in the trial, and then the framing of these guys, like interrogation. It's like an interrogation like lens with focus. The focus goes all the way to the back. And here are the loser, dumb guy. If he is or not, I don't have a judgment on that. Is on trial, and he's going to admit things and not. But the architecture is that European luxury. So the travesty of justice is taking place within the highest realm possible, the highest thing achieved, I suppose, if that's the symbolism here, of European Western civilization. I'll just say European. It's French. So Dax gets a say in the trial, but among the most cold-hearted people in this movie, this guy. So some students will say, you'd say, who's the most cold-hearted? Because he doesn't allow any evidence. So strange. I just watched Anatomy of a Fall, and that movie is bizarre to me. Is it a French court? It's got to be, right? Yes. So the French court in that movie, they allow for so much context. It's absurd to me, some of the context they allow. But then here in this movie, which is, again, a French trial, a military trial, they allow zero context, which maybe that's a big deal, maybe not. How much context should justice allow? Like character witnesses, like your previous achievements in the military. This man, who's the head of is he a judge? I'm not sure, judge and jury. He shuts everybody down. He allows nothing, absolutely nothing. And if you have a sense of justice, you're like, this guy's so cold-hearted. Is he in? And you get this Kubrickian paranoia. Is he in league with the generals? Right? These generals who are interested in their ambition and their acclaim and the media focus. Maybe. We have zero evidence for that. No, nothing is said as far as I remember that would say that, but you can be that paranoid. This is the age of paranoia. America has a lot of cycles of paranoia that goes from medium to high and back to medium, back to high. And this is a high moment in the 50s. And that's where I go, historical context. Maybe this is about, in a weird way, McCarthyism. Maybe. I haven't personally thought about that too much. I think it's more about the military, but you could, go that far. Or anything else that looks like a show trial that is a sham of whatever your notion of justice is. You get to the end of the movie, and this is where the money is. For me, the men in the prison, last rites, last meal, and the priest comes along, and the man in the middle, there's, I said the three men are different, chosen different ways. Here they are, one's Catholic nominally. The man in the middle, the Ralph Meeker character, is an agnostic, but says, okay, I'll take the last rites. And then the man on the far left is, I don't know, an atheist, but he's at least he's not going to take the last rites. He gets mad at the priest. He goes and punches him. He gets a skull fracture. So three orientations towards death, finality, this sham of justice. And will you take another bureaucracy? So sorry, Catholic Church. I don't mean this, but probably the movie does. You could watch it this way. The Catholic Church is a bureaucracy, and they are not able to stop this execution, which is a sham of justice. They're just able to give you your last rites and do their own, rituals. Just like we saw the ritual of the trial, here's the ritual of the last rites. So I'm not saying the Catholic Church is bad in any way. It's just part of this, that the ineffectiveness, if they could at all, of fixing the sham. And the priest is wonderful because oh, what's his name? I gotta look up my cast list. But this man, this actor, is almost always cast Emil Meyer. I'm probably not saying his name correctly. I see his face all the time in these earlier 40s, 50s noirs, it feels like, and he's always a thug. And it's casting against type, it feels like. Maybe he played a priest in another movie, but that face of a thug from some of the noirs. So look him up in the associations that this actor has, but I think that's a strong casting. This moment here in the prison jumps and contrasts with this, which is the most high European civilization thing in the movie, which is a waltz. They have a waltz in the French chateau, and this General Brulard is part of it. This is where Colonel Dax is going to confront Brulard and tell him, hey, Scarface tried to fire on his own troops. And they have this conversation in this whiny-diny place with the dance in the background, no threats to be killed at all. This is where the elites hobnob with the high elites. And look at that wonderful, if you think it's wonderful, that wonderful bedroom, vast library, but this is where the Machiavelli conversations are happening. Colonel Dax wants to be honest, Colonel Brulard, not at all. And so, what do you do? So that's the giant question for this movie. What do you do if you're Colonel Dax? Stuck with some principles, knowing shams have happened, stuck in a war. You can't really run because you'd get killed. You can't go AWOL. You report on your superiors? Well, if you did that, maybe their superiors are going to undermine you or in favor of them. It's a crazy way to be. Is this the law of nature? Is this the typical power structure of bureaucracies? Is this just the nature of the middle of the 20th century? It's up to you to figure that out. But then the contrast is Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon plays the system, the games of these power elites, all to rise. In terms of upward mobility is maybe a good American one to do, up the class system. But playing the games that the generals would be offering here. So if you stuck Barry Lyndon in this, he'd be like, yeah, I'd work my way up to general, and I'd screw everybody to get all the way to the top. Whereas Colonel Dax is kind of the principled man in this, of course. But he does play games. He plays games in that scene. Big deal. We return to the chateau. This is, the full circle thing. The beginning was the shot of the chateau, the soldiers around it. Now the soldiers are coming out, lining up, and we're having this execution. And it's always a big deal with, to me, with younger people or people, first-time viewers. Are they really going to have this execution? There's no way they would do this. This is such a sham. This movie would be such a downer. Well, yeah, they are going to have the execution. And that's what's going to, it's going to be right outside this palatial estate, chateau. Orderly. Perfect, symmetrical, and yet the biggest sham of injustice ever. Not really, but I am exaggerating. But a sham. And you're going to have your own men killed even though they're blameless. So to show some final shots, here's a POV shot. I said we will have these. This is one of those from the point of view of onlookers looking straight at these guys. All three lined up. The one guy with the skull fractures there, he's sort of passed out. It's probably the nicest way to be in this moment. The man in the middle and the man on the right with the priest up there giving last rites. Another POV shot, almost from the point of view of the three men. I don't think there's any gospel or Bible resonances here, frankly, but you might find them since the Catholic Church is there with the three men lined up for trials, and they're all sort of they're blameless and they're scapegoats. Here is the prosecutor, though, with the chateau and the powerful army behind him, another symmetrical composition, almost face on. This is a devastating, not fourth wall break, but close. And then this is the big deal, the execution, a fantastic shot of the three men getting their last rites while you see the hearse with the three coffins. What is it, over there, and that's where they're going. And the almost noir-like slant to their, well, it's the other way. that way, the slant to their orientation as the priest works his way to the left, I think, in this one. But that hearse, that orderly, symmetrical, horizontal hearse is always in the background, waiting for them. Colonel Dax's reaction is like this. That's the shot right after this. Next shot is of these two generals. Low angle shot looking up, making them look powerful. They look smug. They got their capes on. Now, This is the next shot. Will they really execute the men? Yes. Now let's make a big deal of this. If you were to make this movie, what would you have chosen? The next shot. I can tell you what most Hollywood movies would have chosen. They would have chosen some version of showing the men get shot and then cut to reaction shot of Colonel Dax. And you would see Colonel Dax wince, cry, get upset, look somber, something like that, so that you, with the reaction shot, could identify the emotions of his emotions with yours. You would have your emotions that this is a sham affirmed. You would get some powerful comment. Maybe you have swelling music here too, which does not happen in this movie. Or you might cut away completely and not show it at all. The Disney edit would have been a bit different. I don't know, maybe it would be like Ewoks celebrating. Whatever. What would the choice be? I think it tended to be a reaction shot. That's not the shot at all. You don't, where to put the camera too when you show them get shot. If you're going to do that, behind them, to the side to show the soldiers shoot the men. You know where Kubrick puts it? To me, this is the greatest shot of the movie, but it's the most devastating of all. Where's the next shot? Where do you see the execution? Right from the point of view of the men. This is the Call of Duty shot, as my student said. You're firing on somebody like a first-person video game. And the choice is to have you be an eyewitness to the execution, but even, I think, with the firing squad holding a gun, anybody looking at this is shooting at these men. Now, what does that mean? It's interesting. It's a horrible choice in a lot of ways. It's like, I am responsible for shooting them? But the question is, would I have done this? If I were there in this bureaucracy, in this French military, ordered to do my duty, I guess I would have to, because otherwise they would kill me too. That's the nature of bureaucracies, maybe. Do your duty, do what they say. If you break that, you'll get in trouble. Well, these guys are in trouble for doing what the bureaucracy says, so what the heck, But what would we have done? The Kubrick undercuts sentimentality here. The reaction shot, Colonel Dax cries, looks somber. You feel the somberness. You feel the shams of injustice. No. You are implicated in this. Every single viewer. Kubrick himself looking at this. Anybody on the movie set, anybody who's a philosopher who thinks of pacifist, they're implicated where this camera is. Now, by the way, you can argue that the camera is once again a ghost-like observer and just right up there with the firing squad and not participating. I don't feel that way. Personally, I feel like I am shooting these men. And so then, yep, I'm responsible for their deaths. Now, what does that mean? We're all in a bureaucracy and we can't get out. We're all in this giant, vast system of people being ordered to do terrible things and superiors who are out to get us. Paranoia reigns. They're ambitious. It's a dark vision on Kubrick's part. It, I think, is consistent with his later movies. So, which ones? I mentioned them. Barry Lyndon, 2001. Every conversation in 2001 is conspiratorial, paranoid, not direct. Everybody's playing games with everybody else. Every single one. You're either fighting or playing these sort of status games, secret games. Eyes Wide Shut, probably. Full Metal Jacket. But a lot of these movies that he makes are about this very thing. So I am responsible here. We are responsible. Kubrick's responsible. We would all do this. Man, oh man. The very next shot after you watch the men. Okay, so the men die. I'm showing two shots there. One, they're upright. Two, they get shot. Just so you know that you do see the bullets fired and you see the men get killed. The very next shot. Oh my gosh, we're back in the apartment or bedroom, whatever it is. Two generals eating. What are they doing? It's, again, sign of wealth, aristocratic luxury. And they're saying how great the execution was, and they use food metaphors. The one man says that it was in good taste. As he's eating, talking about someone dying, it almost feels like cannibalism. In the disgusting nature of both of these guys conspiring to, 1, charge the anthill, 2, get their own men killed, 3, cover it up, 4, use ordinary men who are brave in combat as scapegoats, 5, to live a life of luxury, and then condemn them into these rat-infested, horrible trenches. It's just a travesty. If you have like even that much morality, this movie's almost an empathy test. And these two generals, but then Dax comes in. This is fascinating. I mean, one of the great conversations to me in a war movie, because Dax is going to try to tell the truth. General Brulard on the left thinks he's being ambitious and undermining his superior Scarface in order to Machiavelli-like get his position, to kick his superior out to get his position. You know, that's the mentality of the higher-ups to General Brulard. But no, Dax is about principle. And so this is a conversation about the Scarface, General Miro, having to, face scrutiny, scorn for ordering bombardment of his own men during the anthill sequence about an hour earlier in the movie. Well, General on the left, who I believe is the most cold-hearted character, thinks Dax is conspiring. And they're in this awesome place. And it's a wonderful conversation because it is about what should dominate: pragmatism, self-centered ambition, some kind of principle. And it's very clear that General Brulard believes that right and wrong is based on pragmatics, his own, and that he even asked the question, his last words in the movie are, "What did I do wrong?" And the next shot is, and it's a close emotion shot, a reaction shot of Kirk Douglas, Colonel Dax, and he says, "If you don't know the answer, then I pity you." So that maybe if this is just about, again, the French military, okay, we're just ragging on the French. If this is about 20th century warfare, then we're dealing with the fact that bureaucracies, and those that the public or the media would say we should root for because they're patriotic, these things are by their nature extremely twisted and cruel. Even in fact, the movie talks about patriotism, brings up the famous Samuel Johnson quote about patriotism being the last refuge of the scoundrel. This movie might be called anti-patriotic, in the vein of the nationalistic bureaucracies are this twisted and distorted and hideous. Man, I'm getting real dark here, but that is one strong way to, and Dax is stuck in it. There is no way to get out, and the best he can do is pity these guys. He won't play their games. In my video on the Paths of Glory, this is a live stream, I did a more formal edited video on this, and I made a big deal about this end sequence, which is just weird. You would never see this in a mainstream movie today unless it were an A24 movie. Even that would be a risk. After the final conversation, everything's over, we've climaxed, you go to a local tavern, you have these Frenchmen hooting and hollering, catcalling at this woman here, the only woman in the movie, the only enemy in the movie. Why? She is, I think, been captured. She's German. So you confront the enemy, the face of the enemy. And that's the face of the enemy. She sings a sentimental song in German, but somehow the French know it. Now, I don't know the history of this song. Maybe it's a folk song that both countries know. Maybe it's a tune that they both know, but with different lyrics. Either way, it gets the men who are catcalling hideously, in my opinion, to sober up and to look at her with sentimentality, with passion. Well, these aren't the best shots of them. They really start to, the next one. They really start to cry and sing along with her and feel her pain, or feel their pain through her pain. Something like that. And Dax looks on, and then he walks back in and he goes to his next, he hasn't moved up through bureaucracy, he hasn't been promoted. He goes back to his next planning session, or wherever they're going next. And the question for me as an American rebel is, why the heck does Dax even stay in this system? The obvious practical answer is he can't get out because he'll get shot. Going AWOL is devastating. But the question for me, and as I said in my video, is sentimentality the way out? It's like to feel sympathy, empathy through emotional art, folkish art here, the way to get out of this horrible bureaucracy. Is it just an escape? People don't like me saying this. I think Kubrick is actually bashing sentimentality here. It is an escape. It's not the way out, or if there is a way out, there may be no way out. But the sentimentality is a way to get back to being patriotic, or get back to doing your duty with these horrible generals above you, willing to sacrifice you. That's what Dax is going to go back and do. But this is sort of like a drug. You can tolerate hideous, unprincipled, terrible things happening to you and to your people through some sentimentality. I don't see any sentimentality in Kubrick. I see him undermining it later. It could be that in the 1950s, this movie, the way it's written, the script and all that, in the mood of a lot of these 50s movies, 40s, 50s, would call for a scene like this to sort of diminish the absolute darkness of the movie and to give us some relief through these French guys and German women sort of sympathizing with each other. I don't want to watch the movie that way. I want to watch the movie as if it's against the sentimentality here, as an escape that allows Colonel Dax to go back to his military duties. But then again, I go, I don't know what the guy would do. He can't escape. He can't go AWOL. He can't fight the system. I don't know what you would do in this scenario. So maybe this is the only way. Booze. Booze and song in the tavern. And some emotional connection with this woman who is your enemy. I think this is a wonderful movie overall. I don't know if you got that in this video. I hope you did. But there's so many layers of complexity to it. And the layers really are, what is this movie supposed to be attached to? You watch it, you get whatever you want from its particular 1.5 hour, screenplay and its story. Is it supposed to be attached to 1950s militarism? Is it supposed to be attached to mid-20th century patriotism? Is it just supposed to be attached to World War I? Is it supposed to say something about World War II? Is it supposed to say something about the Korean War? The Cold War? Is it supposed to say something about... and I've been saying this the whole time because I assume it's more abstract. I can say it's more abstract. It's about bureaucracies. Whichever one it is. Democracy, communism, business, nonprofit, the church, various huge churches, you name it. This is the way that bureaucracies, at least at this point, tend to be. And I tend to take the political point of view, by the way, that administrative states become pretty powerful in the 20th century up until right now today. The vast bureaucracies of these states, whether the U.S. or Russia, Soviet Union at this point, anywhere, are sort of vast networks of legislative and juridical policymakers. Now, notice I'm not saying the deep state. I'm not conspiratorial at all. I just think this is out in the open. You can see it. But the administrative states have tons and tons of power. And it's hard to change them up. Like, we're not having, revolutions like we used to. They're pretty static, in my opinion. And these administrative states are what Kubrick is talking about. That's my view of this movie, combined with his filmography and the things that happen in it. So that was the question, is like, what do you attach this movie to? And I think it's a wonderful movie for illustrating this problem for all interpreters of what's this really supposed to be about. So feel free to just say it's about it's the typical mid 1920s rant, a good one, against World War I. World War I stupidity. Right? Man, would this be a sneaky, dark movie if it was about World War II, right? Right? And we're right in that year where, The Bridge on the River Kwai comes out, David Lean's movie. The book had been published before by a French writer. And that's a pretty dark take on World War II, Bridge on the River Kwai. So maybe that's the mood at this sort of mid to late 1950s for some artists, some film artists at least. That's a suggestion. Go ahead and do an undergrad or grad school paper on that. In fact, I suggested a lot of those in this movie. What have been hanging on that one guy's image? That's terrible. I'm going to look at the comments real quickly, but that's my quick and dirty take on this. And by the way, I am doing this while sick and the weather out is terrible. I think part of my problem is the weather. It's so bad. It's like Pacific Northwest bad. I feel like grunge music today. I'm looking at the, let's get the image up. Well, no, what do we want to put up here? We'll put up the wonderful, the casting is spectacular. The wonderful face of Kirk Douglas, who's an amazing actor. Doing so well here. I love Ralph Meeker, by the way. I think Ralph Meeker, I've said this many times on the channel, he could have been a great actor. You pick a decade from the 30s through today, I think he would have been a popular actor. I think he would have been more popular if he had been in the 70s or the 90s or today than he was then. Back then he was used more for bit roles like this, but I think he's got the face and the voice. I think Scorsese would have used Ralph Meeker. I mean, I just love the guy. So, in a movie, I'm always thrilled to see him. Eli Ray says this. I'm just looking in the comments, just so quickly. Eli Ray says this is Kubrick's highest rated film on IMDb Letterboxd. Is that right? I am shocked by that. And it may be that there's fewer viewers of it to then give it lower ratings. There's more fans, or people like me, enthusiasts, getting into it, whereas, the Kubrick, more casual Kubrick people go later in the 60s and beyond. I don't know, though, because I doubt many people are watching The Killing, too. I think that I saw that is very highly rated. I'm not as in love with that movie as everybody else, but, yeah. I am surprised that is as high as the aggregate ratings, yeah, weird. Yeah, you're right. Julian says another point. This is done through dialogue. That's why I call it a TV teleplay. That's where it feels like, on TV they wouldn't have showed the action hardly at all. The other movie, The Thin Red Line, the 60s movie that Terrence Malick vastly changed and remade in the 1990s. That one, too, is a lot of dialogue. I think there probably are a few of those. Like, it's not going to be too unique that way, but the friendly fire aspect, I think, is pretty unique. It's even with the friendly fire, there's so many friendly fires versus, enemies killing you here. It's in the vein of the coming postmodern satirists, if that's what they are. Joseph Heller's Catch-22 being like the one to think about as far as literary novels. Go read that book. Go read Vonnegut, who's a little bit, after this movie. But there are going to be a number of authors in that vein, who are dark, cynical, I think in good ways cynical, by the way, satirical, ironic. Joseph Heller's Catch-22 is the same way, like World War II, total bureaucracy, total shit show. I mean, with people just trying to get out of the war, the bureaucracy trying to kill you, people making tons of profits off the war. That's all in World War II. Which still tends to be the war that everybody goes, yes, that's great that we won that, good that we fought it. But you go read Catch-22, oh my gosh, it's so dark about that war, and this is too, and as is Strangelove later on. Yep. Some more. Something like 50,000 men died in the practice runs of the D-Day invasion. Yeah, that's amazing that was a practice runs. Holy cow, is that right? In the practice runs? Sheesh. I sort of believe that. I think the friendly fire numbers are underestimated. You know what one other thing is? I think it's a Christopher Hedges book. War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning. It might be that book, but I can't remember which book. There is I'll look this up for you guys. It's an amazing book on how all of these wars, including the Franco-Prussian War from the 19th century, is still killing people today. Like unexploded ammunition or munitions, like bombs, buried mines, that sort of thing, still killing people. Vietnam, obviously, that's still happening. These wars continue on in horrific ways. I don't know how many people still die from World War I. I would imagine so many of those mines have been exploded, or then have gone dead. But then who knows? Like, I'm sure World War II is still killing people. So that's a sad truth, And that's why I'm totally against war in every single way, because it keeps killing innocent people long after the war is over. World War II did not end, by the way, in 1945. I don't know how many of you know that. Like, these little skirmishes and other sorts of battle things going on all across the world Not in giant ways like the Axis versus Allies, but in little, and I say little, I really don't mean that, in little ways, all across the world. Things were still unresolved up until the 1950s in a number of places. So it's really devastating. This Modern Warfare is devastating. I think Kubrick's a pretty good voice about it, frankly. Yeah, fantastic technical innovator for Kubrick. Attack by Robert Aldrich, similar. Okay, yeah, that's good. So anyway, here we are. I went a long time today, but I'm really enthusiastic because I think this movie's fantastic. Thank you so much for participating. Really enjoy all of you are here. Thanks for all the great comments. This is one of the best. Love enthusiastic students. Really not students though. Really fellow movie watchers. So thank you all for watching this and the comments, which are worth checking out. Video later this week coming out. Another Oscar video, revisiting the Oscar videos. So hope you have fun with that. See you later.